Hi, this is the Teaserking. I'd like to talk about just overall college football and what I'm seeing the first few weeks, some betting tips and handicap tips, just overall what I look for and how I play some of the games. Just overall general information. First I'd like to talk about is Michigan. I am very perplexed and confused about that team. There's no way you can stop that offense except for Rich Rodriguez can stop the offense. I found his play calling was terrible in the Michigan State game. Way too many passes. This offense is set up as a running offense. In theory, Denard Robinson is basically a tailback, and what you have by using him as a tailback is you basically have 10 blockers instead of 9. That's the whole theory of it. And you got a fast guy and he looks for a crease. Well, you didn't have any creases against Michigan State because you didn't run any option. I didn't understand that. He opened up running inside with the running backs. Where did that go? Then he became a passer. Well, Denard Robinson is not a passer. He can pass, but it's better play action. He's better where he's kind of looking at the option, he pulls up, or there's 9 in the box and he throws those quick passes. If you wanted to pass the ball against Michigan State, Tate Forcier should have been in the game. All these end zone interceptions, Tate Forcier should have been in the game. If you're going to run a 3rd and 6 and you're going to throw the ball in the end zone, Denard Robinson shouldn't be in the game. And or you run an option off of that where he kind of goes and he starts to run, and if they pull up, then he can pass. The guys will be wide open, but you don't have him drop back and pass. That's ridiculous. He didn't run enough. This guy is 4.3 speed, like Barry Sanders. You give him the ball 10 times, he might gain a yard 9 times, and then he goes for 80. You got to keep firing that guy. I didn't understand the play calling at all. You had many drop passes by the receivers. I'm just, in a big game like that, one guy's wide open at the 5 for a touchdown. Another guy breaks the route out. Denard threw a perfect pass, and the guy's like at the 5-yard line, and he stops and he slows down, and Denard threw it as if he was going to keep running, and that guy stops, and then the ball overthrows, and it looks like Denard overthrew it. It was the receiver who stopped. He was still wide open, but Denard's assuming he's going to keep running. The 2 interceptions were inexcusable. You don't run those plays in the goal line. You run option plays. You can't stop option plays. Via Oklahoma running the wishbone, Nebraska in the 70s and 80s when they were so powerful, it was option wishbone and you can't stop it. There's no way you got good runners you can stop it. Michigan's defense is just terrible. Greg Robinson should be fired. The whole recruiter should be fired. The 3-3-5. I don't see Alabama, TCU, Boise State, Utah, all the top defenses running it. So they're not running it. I don't know why it's so good. You need beef up there to stop the run. Look at the Minnesota Vikings. They got 300-pound guys. You can't run on them for 5 yards. Are you kidding me? Tennessee's the same way. You can't run on these guys. So I don't think having 3 guys and having 5 guys block 3 is really good against a power running team like Michigan State, Wisconsin, and some of these other, like Alabama. Forget about it. Alabama would put up 60 on Michigan. It's just, there's no concept to that. If I'm Michigan, I keep Rich Rodriguez as the offensive coordinator or the head coach, and I go out and I talk to Alabama, TCU, Utah, and I get their defensive coordinator. Yes, Utah, they have an excellent defense. Or you can go to LSU if you want, or Florida. Virginia Tech, you can't get him, but maybe another defensive coach on that team to get their schemes. I just don't get it. I don't get the play calling in the big game. You need to run Denard Robinson, run that option. The defensive ends were coming upfield. All you got to do is cut underneath them. I wouldn't even block the guy. I would just let Denard run past him, and I had the tackle go take out the linebacker who's spying him. Just no imagination. They acted like it's like a team that sees the blitz, and they don't understand what they do. And it blows my mind. It's like they've never seen a blitz before. Go out, pull some San Francisco 49er tapes of the 80s. You watch Joe Montana, how he handled the blitz. It's not hard. You take a 3-step drop. The receiver has to see who's blitzing, and he goes right in the spot, and the quarterback fires it. and that's it. And then they won't blitz you anymore. If they're spying Denard Robinson, it ain't that hard to figure out. It's that middle linebacker. The tight end cuts across the middle, or the running back, and he's wide open because who's going to cover him? So it's a 3-step drop. You let the guy come in, and you just toss it over his head. You see how long that happens for. You want to spy me? I'm going to throw this little dink pass. It's not hard. There's maybe a screen pass, a bubble screen. They can't defend that stuff in college. But there's no excuse. Michigan throwing 2 interceptions in the end zone. No excuse at all, because you shouldn't be drop back in passing. You should be running that option and let Denard with the 4.3 speed find the crease and go. And nobody's going to stop him. I mean, the best you're going to do is a 5-yard gain. I don't understand Michigan's running backs, why they haven't gotten a really good one yet. He's been there 3 years. Steve Slayton, an old divine at West Virginia. Why he can't recruit a running back. I don't understand it. Their running backs are terrible at Michigan. No speed, no power, no threat. And when you get that, see, one of the reasons Pat White was so good was Steve Slayton, which made Rich Rodriguez good because he had people to run that offense. Where is the Steve Slayton? It can't be hard. I could find kids playing high school who could do that. Maybe I ought to be the recruiter, because this is ridiculous. They can't find a running back for Michigan with this offense? Are you kidding me? Unbelievable. Defensively, I know they got 4 safeties who got hurt. I get that. But they need a better scheme. They need 4-man fronts. They need better linebackers. Who the heck's recruiting that defense? Should be shot. Greg Robinson, what is he? He's not a defensive coordinator. What do you got him there for? Again, go to TCU, and if you can't get their defensive coordinator, I'd hire their linebacker coach or their secondary coach and say, you're now our defensive coordinator. Run the TCU defense, because last I checked, they had 2 shutouts in a row, and the way they play defense, they're very, very strong. So I honestly don't get the problems a school like Michigan has defensively, a school like Notre Dame has defensively. It's inexcusable that they can't find kids that can play defense. If Michigan wants to run the Florida defense or the LSU defense, then go get their coordinators, bring them in, recruit their kids. I mean, there's a ton of kids that can play defense. What Nebraska used to do is they used to recruit running backs, and they'd put them at linebacker and safety, and that's all they did was they recruited like 20 running backs. Okay, you're going to be safeties, you're going to be corners, you're going to be linebackers, you're going to be running backs. Miami used to do is they used to get a guy who was a halfback. They used to get like defensive linebackers, and they'd beef them up, make them linemen. And they used to get safeties and beef them up, make them linebackers. They had the fastest team ever. And I'm talking to teams with Michael Irvin and the teams in the 80s and the 90s. That's exactly what they did. They'd get a guy, they'd beef him up, move him up into position, and they were so fast, you couldn't do anything with them. That's why Miami won for 15 years. It's not that hard to figure out, and I just don't get, like, Michigan being so inept defensively that a good high school team could put 40 up on them. I mean, that's just ridiculous. This is Michigan. There's no excuse for that. Anyway, change the thought. Betting keys. What do? I look at strong senior-led teams. I have my trends. My trends are fantastic for college. Specific teams are Iowa, Utah, Air Force, TCU, Boise State. These teams cover and cover and cover and cover. Once in a blue moon, they don't cover because they're laying so many points. You just look for these key teams. Other teams I look for are bet against teams. Memphis, New Mexico State. Offhand, I'm trying to think of a few others. There's always a few that just can't cover. Then you look at like middle of the road teams, but they're very good in conference. Case in point would be UCF, Central Florida, Hawaii. They just went and beat Fresno State by 30. You get a Hawaii as a dog unless they're playing Boise. If it's pretty even, if they go to, if Hawaii goes to San Jose State and they're getting points, I'd bet my house on the game. That's how sure I'd be that they'd handle them. And you just look like Nevada. I mean, they're going to be a dog against Boise, but they beat Cal by like 52-28, Cal. And then you look for teams in their roles. I locked Cal against UCLA this week because Cal was at home, and then I looked at the against UCLA, and they're very successful against them, and that's why I locked them, and they won 35-7. So you've got to look for teams in their roles. Who's a good underdog? Who's good favorites? Who's good at home? Who's good on the road? A very good road favorite is Ohio State. They cover and cover and cover. Now I'm talking in teasers, 6-point teasers, but they cover. They're very good. A kind of a weak team that's a good team this year is Penn State. They're not good because they got the freshman quarterback. Teams like Georgia and Tennessee, you got to be careful when they're favorites. You've got to, like BYU, the teams that are kind of new and have freshmen and they're young, you bet against them. Another couple of teams in the Big Ten is Michigan State, is very, very good against the number, and Wisconsin at home is very good against the number. And then you just look at matchups. How do they do against a spread offense? How do they do against a good defensive team? The big game. Now Alabama played Florida, and then they had at South Carolina. Well, you have to assume they'll be a little flat. I did play Alabama because I thought Alabama was good enough to win the game, and my fault. But normally when you have a big game such as Alabama against Florida, the following week the winner is going to be flat. Look at Oregon against Stanford. Oregon wins the game, but look at Oregon next week. They go to Washington State and they only win by 20. Washington State's a terrible team, but they were flat because they played the big game. Stanford was flat and they barely beat SC. And at that line, I thought that spread was awfully high, 10 points. I thought it was ridiculous to give USC. It's still USC. Yeah, they lost to Washington on a field goal at the end of the game, but they didn't get blown out. Other teams you look at are good dogs. Virginia Tech's an outstanding dog. Anytime you see them as a dog, you jump on them. Pitt is kind of young this year. Their quarterback's kind of bad, so you kind of watch and see if their quarterback gets better. Otherwise, you just you look at Memphis, you look at Mississippi, or you look at Memphis and New Mexico State, and you just bet against them. And when they play a fairly good team, you really bet them hard. Case in point, Boise has to win every game by 50 points. As long as these lines are 30, I'm going to bet Boise. I bet them every week so far, except for the first week, because Virginia Tech was a dog. TCU, Utah, they have to beat these little teams, and they have to blow them out for the ratings. And take a team like Air Force. Air Force plays Wyoming. They have to kill them because they know they got to play Utah and TCU. So when they play the big games, they figure they're going to lose. So they can't afford to lose to the littler teams. So you'll see the blowouts, and you'll see it in every conference. That's why I have so many teasers out each week, is I go conference by conference, and you'll get a team playing a weak team, but they have to kill them because they know they've got the better teams coming up. So you know if you're Air Force and you got Utah and TCU, you know if you're Nevada, you got to play Boise State. Well, you're probably going to lose that game. You are going to lose it. So you got to beat the littler teams, and it just goes to each conference. These teams have to win. Now the best is like when you get a team playing an out of conference. We had that. 2 games were like that, and I played so many games last week I couldn't even play all of them that I wanted to. West Virginia and Virginia Tech. West Virginia was playing Miami of Ohio. No, I think that was Cincinnati. Virginia Tech was playing, I think, UNLV, and West Virginia was playing another weak team. I don't remember offhand. I'm so sorry. But they had to win the games. Virginia Tech's already lost to James Madison, and they know they're going to play Miami, and I don't know if they got Florida State unless it'll be the championship game, or North Carolina. Virginia Tech can't afford to lose to a UNLV or whatever. So they got to blow them out, and they did, and they won. Or they played Central Michigan, I'm sorry. And they did, and they blew them out. And then West Virginia played UNLV, and it's the same thing. They know they were going to play Pitt, and they know they're going to play Connecticut and Rutgers. They just have these bigger games, so they have to win these games when they play a weak team, and they're going to blow them out because they have to win the game. The only time you get these upsets, the reason Alabama lost because they played Florida and they were flat. That's when you get the upset or the look ahead. Somebody's looking and they've got their bitter rival the following week, So then